engineering is the main skill for using generative AI. I'm going to show you the differences. I hope that you can see my screen. I'm going to give you a clear example.
Perfect, Jorge.
If you write something like this, I'm using ChatGPT because the model is important, of course. And my first tip for prompt engineering is choose the most advanced model that you can use. And so I'm using ChatGPT 4.0 in this moment. We can change the model here. And of course, there are other models, but I'm going to prompt engineer in this one. So if you write a prompt like this, you'll get this kind of reply. But if you write something different and look at the difference of my prompt, the first one said only write an email to Peter to cancel Friday's meeting. And now I'm adding something in British English, use 50 words, friendly tone. And it's a short email, and I will not need to edit. Of course, I could provide my name, and I can change that on the settings, or even I can try to reschedule in the same prompt. But if you write something like this, maybe it's not true what is being written, because I didn't provide this data, and so I have to edit the output. But if I provide a more clear and specific prompt, I can get a better email that is going to provide my needs. So let's go to our presentation. And I hope that this example, just adding a few words and some information, you can get a better output. And you know, if you give smarter prompt, you get better outputs. So let's explore this idea. Sorry, wrong screen. So in the last session, we talked about this. In generative AI, we use large language models, and the prompt is the thing we write, and that is the input that the large language model is going to process, and then is going to give you an output based on probabilities. So if you provide the prompt with the right context, it will predict what you need in a better way. Is prompting easy? Yeah, it's in your own language, but the model has a way of understanding the language and the questions you provide. Maybe in the future, this is going to change, because as models get more evolved, you also can get better text understanding. But at this moment, we need prompt engineering. And I will say that prompt engineering, the skill to design the prompt for better output, is also a good way of thinking about problem solving. And one of the other suggestions I have for you is, if you want to get good at prompt engineering, you have to try a lot. So my tip is use prompt for everything you need in your work to solve every problem, and start using different ways of prompting, and always writing down on a document so you can see the progress of interacting with a large language model. And prompt engineering is important because we can get better outputs, but also we can optimize our time, and we can don't waste so many hours editing text, but we can have text ready to use, or images ready to use, or sound ready to use. So prompt engineering is also a way to be more productive with you. As I said, I'm using ChatGPT, and I'm going to give you an example. This is a placeholder for text. If you have a meeting note and you write this kind of prompt, like summarize the meeting notes, and then you put the text here, is less effective, but the model works better if you put the text inside the symbols, because it's going to say, this is the text you are going to summarize. And then you say, how do you want things? I want the meeting notes in a single paragraph, and then write a markdown list of the speakers and each of their key points, and finally list the next steps or action items suggested by the speakers, if any. So it's better for your company, for your project, if you ask a summary that really provides you some utility and give you some advantage for your work. You don't want just a quick summary that doesn't provide any utility for your work. So this is a different way of prompting. You can try, because I'm going to share with you the presentation so you can try later and you can see the difference. You pick up your meeting notes and then you organize. And nowadays we have transcriptions inside Teams, for example, with Firefly, so we can have access to the meeting notes, the full content in text, and then we can summarize, so we can add value for that time. But if we go for the characteristic of a good prompt, you have something like this. You provide the model, the goal, what do you want, the context, the source, and the expectation. And if you keep these 4 variables updated, you can get a better output. So let's see different levels of prompt. And when you are writing, think the level of prompt that you are doing. So I go to the model and I ask, explain supervised learning. If I do this, I'm relying on the model's knowledge about supervised learning. But it's good to have some knowledge about the topic that I'm asking the model, because I want to judge the quality of the output. But this is level 1. If I'm going to level 2, I'm going to ask in simple language, and ask also to provide an example of how it is used in image recognition. Of course, I can only write this prompt if I know about supervised learning, but this is very good for classes. I want to explain the concept, but I also want to explain to my students in a clear way, and I want to give them an example and a practical example of use supervised learning. But now let's see a different level. Here, I use the first example and an explanation, and then I'll explain I give a more detailed explanation, or I ask a more detailed explanation to the model. And if you try this kind of prompt, you'll get better outputs. And these are very important and useful for classes, but also if you are organizing a meeting and you have different departments, sometimes it's useful to have a clear message and a clear terminology explained to everybody. So we can do this in a report. So you have to choose the level of detail that you want to the output. You want to define the clarity and the kind of answer that you need, and you want to give some structure and guidance. I'm going to stop and going to show you something in the model. If you go to ChatGPT, and if you have a paid version of ChatGPT, you can also go to the settings, to the customized ChatGPT, and you can give custom instructions and how would you like ChatGPT to respond. And this is another way that guarantee that in every chat, some context is being guaranteed by the model. But remember, you can always do that in your prompt, because sometimes the conditions change. For example, usually I use ChatGPT for work, but imagine that I want to write a Christmas card. So I'm going to need to provide the model another context. And maybe I don't want to change the settings of my GPT, and I can do that in a prompt. You can also do something like asking the model to play some role play, like act as Steve Jobs and analyze my previous prompts. And I can ask different roles like act as Carl Rogers and do the same. So the emails are different. The analysis is different. And with large language models, it is a key feature to ask the model to do some role play. And you can play with different answers. Sometimes it's a good way for brainwriting. So you put all your ideas and then you act the model to act as a specific role or a personality, and then you can have the model asking you questions or revising your work. For example, if you are writing content, you can say to the model, act as a content editor and review my piece of text. So let's return to our presentation. So a technical example. This is a zero-shot prompt. A zero-shot prompt is a prompt without specific context. So you just rely on the model's knowledge or in their capacity to search the web, but you just ask the model. You can also provide data to the model or give them a specific source, but this is a zero-shot prompt. Even if it's level 1, level 2, or level 3. But you can also do something very important, and sometimes we call this give the model time to think. It's not real time. It's a chain of tasks. So, like, you want to write something, about ethics. And then you start with the first prompt. So you are checking the model's answer and you are judging the quality of the answer. And if it is okay, you continue. And then you can even change this prompt for a specific professional setting and a specific ethical dilemma. And the next prompt, you ask from ethical frameworks, and now how each framework would approach the ethical dilemma described earlier. And then you'll ask a way to solve the dilemma. So you are conducting and being the maestro of the model's output, because in each step you are judging the quality of the answer, and then you are improving and building on that same answer. Imagine that you have a project or a company, and you provide the model with this specific information, like this is my company, these are our goals and values, and you introduce the company and analyze my company. And then you see the analysis. Then you ask, do you know the framework of job to be done or the SWOT analysis apply to my company? And then you see what gives you as an output. And then you ask, can you create personas that buy my services? And you see what the model replies. And then, can you create a campaign for these services to that personas? Can you write me an email for each persona? And then you have a document with this chain of thought about your company or your project. If you're writing an essay, you can start, I'm writing an essay to this end. I'm working with this kind of theories, or I have these claims, and you start to provide the model time to think about your own prompts and your real life problems. And then at the end, you can summarize the key points, and you can print them, and you can take that summary to a meeting and can have better meetings. So you bring your problems to solve with generative AI, and then you start breaking the information in a chain of thought. And this is very important. It's going also to train you how to think better, step by step. This one is a post-it, a yellow post-it that you can have near your computer. So when you are prompting, you always remember that you have to keep your goal on, context, you give to provide good sources, and then your expectation. When you are writing, you have to have some careful in what you are writing. So you have to think about the words that you are using. You have to be very clear, and you have to use grammar correctly, and then you have to have punctuation so the model can understand your sentences. And this is one big problem for humans, because when we interact with each other, sometimes we don't say everything we need, because we are in our communication, people can understand the context better than machines. But when you are using a computer, you have to have clear and precise instructions. It's like you have a friend, and that friend is called ChatGPT, and he read a lot of books. But when you need an information or you need him to work your text, you have to be very precise in what you need. And you don't want him uh, to wander around the topics. You want to give him very, very, very clear instructions. Then you have to break down complex tasks in steps. And this is very important because, as we've seen, when we organize the chain of thought, we are giving the model time to organize the information that we need. And sometimes we want the model to do everything, like reply to this email, uh, write me down a marketing campaign, organize the content for my blog, but you have to break down complex tasks into bite-sized pieces so the model has time to work them in a better way. One of the things we always say is test. You have to test the output in real life to see if it works. But there's another way. You can generate different types of outputs. So if you are using a large language model, you don't have to stay with the first generated text. It's only a matter of seconds. So you can generate different versions of the same prompt and see what it works better. If you are creating like in testing a chatbot for client support, you have to test with different kind of clients and different types of problems, and then you have to work out what it works and what doesn't work. So you always have to test. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I think that the culture of most companies that I work with is that they want everything done in the first prompt, and everything well done at the first try. And embracing artificial intelligence is also embracing error, because we learn with problems, we learn with errors, and then we improve and we'll get a better use in the future. We can also play some game with temperature. Temperature is what the model, it's a parameter that provides the model the kind of randomness is going to include in the output. So you can try, you are organizing a business model, and then you want to play and do some creative output. You can ask something based on this information, create a Spotify playlist for our meetings, and then create a list of books to give to our clients and provide them with a better context of our company. And then you can see what the model is going to use. Or look at the box office and see what movies are on the top, and then organize our ideas, but using the context of these movies, and see what happens. So if you start, because it's a large language model, so if you start playing with words, you can play games with temperature, and you don't have to keep them for being used, but it's good to test. You can also ask something like, organize these main ideas in these categories in a table. You can say, create an image about my company, because this model also creates images. You can also do the same thing with voice, and you can ask things with your own voice, or you can provide an audio and try to analyze that audio. So try different things, and that will improve the way you think, the knowledge about the model that you are using, and you'll have different outputs. One skill that is very useful. Sometimes I ask explanations before asking the action. If I'm writing a report, like something like a scientific report, I can say, can you provide me a structure of a scientific report? And then I see the structure, and I start asking, can we do with this structure? Can you compare and see what is better? And then I ask, now with my information, create, use my contact to fill that structure. And first I ask explanation to the model, and then I ask the action. So it's not only providing some data and say, do this. Okay, how you organize the information, how are you making a decision? For example, all algorithms have bias. So if you ask, what are the 10 best books? It's going to provide a list. And then you can ask, how did you make the list? And then we say, I looked into 3 lists, and then I make these options. But what was your criteria? And then you can ask the model. You don't have to accept everything, because the model isn't able to give you wisdom and the truth about things. It's going to provide you a text with some answers, with some reasoning, but you can ask, and you should ask, why, how do you get that information? And you can ask the model different questions. And the strategy I said before, if you start using prompt engineering for every problem, you will start to level up your skill as a prompt engineer. And that skill is going to give you more speed and more output quality in your work. And you can save maybe minutes, hours, maybe days. That depends on your work and, of course, your use. But if you are using prompt engineering only for, in the moment, you need something for the next 5 minutes, you're not creating the skill of prompt engineering that could provide you some advantage. So, for example, if you use the prompt engineering for code generation, you can write something like this, but it's better if you write import, because import will make the model start writing in Python. And if you learn more about how the prompt works, you can have a different way of interacting with the model. So don't have just simple questions, but learn how to talk with the model. And if I want to extract some keywords, I can provide a quick example of the output I'm expecting. Then I'll give a second example, but always using the right grammar in the prompt to separate the instruction and the context. And then in the next, I'm providing my text and I leave this space open and the model will provide me the keywords for my text. And at this moment, this is still very, very important. When I'm writing a scientific paper, I can provide abstracts and keywords, and then I provide my abstract and ask for keywords. And if I have a big wall of text and I want to transform that wall of text in an abstract, I can also do that with good examples and then providing my wall of text and expecting a good abstract. When you work with your own ideas and you have good prompts that you design, you are the owner of your output. If I write down some key points from a lesson and then I ask the model, I'm organizing a document to study later, and these are my notes. Organize them in a good way so I can remember them. Or I could provide good studying practices and then provide my notes and organize this content so I can use my study skills in a good way, make a schedule, organize my daily study. But I can provide a structure before, and I can say, this is a good way for me to study, but I learned that working memory works better in the morning. So please do a new schedule. And you can do almost everything you can do with words, you can do it with large language models. And the golden rule: context, context, context. So if you do some general questions about a general company, you'll not get the thing you need. If you want to write the annual report for your company to show to your shareholders, maybe you want to provide previous reports and then add the information you get from this year, the message you want to pass, and then you ask the model to mix these concepts into a report similar to the last year, but with the new information. You can then add these resources, these references, but you have to provide context. The model is not going to read your mind, and the model is artificial, so it's not a real human. But as you know, some humans need more explanation than others. So you will act like you need to pass all the information that you have. Let's go to the model. In the premium version, you can add, you can connect to a cloud and create some context, or you can upload from the computer, or even you can use GPTs, and they are ready to use GPTs that can provide you some help, but you also can create your own GPT and provide all the context you need. So you can create a GPT for your company with all the information that you have in your company. You can give some capabilities, and then you can have like the CFO GPT. You can have the marketing GPT with your company's information. But if you don't have that, you can provide to the model. So you can just have a Word document with all the information, and you can add that information and say, this document is the context that I need for this chat. And then you can start prompting. But if you don't have that, you can write down. So if I have like company, and the name of the company is Embrace the Mess and Services, organizing data, and country, Portugal, and then I can provide every information I have. Then I can ask some questions. I'm going to be more general because I'm not going to provide more information about this company that doesn't exist. I'm creating one, but I can say create synthetic data about this company. Just for this exercise. And then I can ask something like, act as Seth Godin and define marketing strategy and goals for this company. I can also ask something for like create a logo. Let me just wait for the model. It's going to create a logo for this company. I don't like this logo. Then I can ask for another one. And then I can ask for the content. And then this is not ready to use. Then I can send this for people that are writing the content and say, well, this is the main skeleton of the website, but improve the text with human knowledge and creativity. But you can also do something like do a SWOT analysis. We wait, of course. You can add every framework that you need, and then you can teach how you want that framework to be applied, and you can get the result. So you have to think about the way you want to use ChatGPT and the problem you want to solve. So first, you have your own strategy in a company or a project. Then you have your data strategy, and then you have your artificial intelligence strategy. And you must align everything, and you have to provide data to help the model create some harmony between these different areas. So I think by now you understand what I mean with context. Context is the is the main the golden rule about generative AI. But we have to think like at least 1 year ahead for our time. The future of prompt engineering. And the best way to describe it is that we really don't know. But it looks like the models will evolve. And maybe you don't need to provide as many context as we do now. Because, for example, if you use Copilot, and Copilot reads the context of your OneDrive and creates a specific context to improve your prompt. But the future of prompt engineering is the way you look at the problem. So if you work now with prompt engineering, you are creating a way of thinking to solve problems. And you are thinking like with pen and paper, you're organizing your thoughts, you're seeing this data is useful, this example is good. So you are judging data, algorithms, your own knowledge, and your goals, and probably more things. And this is a key thinking tool that you are going to need in the future for every project. The way you think about the problem will change the way you solve it. You can see this article. Then you can when I share the presentation with you, and you can also try these resources. So that DataCamp has a good article about prompt engineering. It's detailed enough so you can understand why the prompt changes the output, and how this can be an advantage for your work. Then you have the prompt engineering guide from OpenAI, but if you use other model, you can use the specific guide for that model. It's very useful to read the instructions, even if you don't follow them, because you start to understand there is a way to interact with the model. And if you know some tricks, you can improve your prompts, and you can improve your documents that you use in the prompt to provide context. If you don't know how to start, because you are not very creative in the first prompt, you can go to OpenAI, and they have a library with prompts, and you can adapt them later. Because it's more easy to start with something to edit than with a blank page. And always try to link different softwares, different problem strategies, and OpenAI also has a cookbook. And in that cookbook, you can try different things, and even you can look for answers for your problems. I think maybe it's a little too much for the same session, but I hope that with the slides, you can try different prompts and you see the difference in your quality, in the quality of the output. If you have any question, you can say now, or you can send me an email. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, George, for this very inspiring talk. And I think we learned a lot of prompt engineering, or a lot about prompt engineering and different techniques to make the outputs even better. I mean, you already asked the question. I will try to underline it a little bit. Are there any questions to the speaker? Now you have the opportunity to ask all the questions you have. You can also write them in the chat. Okay, comment by Madiba. Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, and indeed, I think that we gain some practical tips that can we directly transfer into our everyday work. So it were really useful. But as I see, there are no specific questions anymore. So in that case, I opened the session on behalf of Eddy Attract and Eddy South Westphalia, and I will also close the session on behalf of our both Eddys. I would once again like to thank George for the presentation. And we have one additional episode in 2 weeks. So it's on the 6th of August. And if you would like to join, you can we will wrap up the contents we had so far within the webinar series, and we are there for general questions about all the 5 sessions. So I really would like to invite you to that session, and I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for joining this morning, and maybe see you then again in 2 weeks.